Hi, I'm Nic Groombridge. I'm a member of the Howard Journal's editorial advisory group, and I've edited some of our virtual editions, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about them. There are three. The first for students, the second concentrates on the media, and the third is on evaluations. The student one covers the entirety of the criminal justice system, police, probation, victims, offenders, etc., and is of value to students, obviously, but to practitioners and academics more widely. I'm going to pick out a couple of particular articles that I think are worth looking at. The first is John Lee's, who looks at the Macpherson report into the death of Stephen Lawrence. He finds that whilst clearly there is the institutional racism that Macpherson finds, he says that a lot of the problems actually derive from more routine policing, particularly things like stop and search. Prisoners often don't necessarily have a voice, and therefore I've picked out the prison autobiography article by Stephen Morgan, which gives a good critical introduction to this literary genre. And finally, from this section, looking at the overlap between victims and offenders, Stephen Farrell and Sarah Maltby examined the lives of probationers and found that whilst, of course, they were offenders, many of them had been victims too. The second virtual edition is about the media and crime, media and criminal justice, and will be of value to students too, but also practitioners and other academics. And here I've again picked out three articles for you to have a look at. The first is by Stan Cohen, who is one of those criminologists who needs little introduction, but this is his introduction. This is him addressing the Howard League in December 1966 on the issue of mods and rockers, and throughout he doesn't use the words folk devils or moral panics, but you can see him working on this. So as I said, this is an introduction to the work of Stan Cohen. Second up is Jamie Bennett, his article on prison film. He's a serving prison governor, and he argues that whilst prison films are far from perfect, they do offer an opportunity to examine penal reform and the lives of prisoners. And third in this section, I'm looking at the work of Mike Huff, who, with David Moxon, examines how the public view offenders and offences, and the British Crime Survey work suggests that they're far less punitive than the media would have us believe. The third virtual edition is that about evaluation, our most recent. I make no excuses for having two picked out articles by Roger Tarling, again a former Home Office civil servant. His articles are 25 years apart, and they argue strongly and historically for the value of research, and suggest that government should be more transparent in its use of its own sponsored research. And I'm going to follow up with two further recommendations. Jeff Nichols and Ian Crowe look at sport and whether you can evaluate it and whether it does work as crime prevention or rehabilitation in this Olympic year. Perhaps we'll be hearing more of these sorts of things. And finally, the work of Rosie Parks and Charlotte Bilby, who go out perhaps on a little bit of a limb and suggest yoga and various spiritual activities might be of assistance in prisons. They recognise the difficulties of evaluating this sort of material, but suggest we take heart and press on. And finally, perhaps I should mention that I am working on a fourth virtual edition, which will be about research methods, both quantitative and qualitative, which again we hope will be of value to students and practitioners.